walks around without being shady. Who knows her values? Who's gone through trials? Her smiles are captured from mouth to mouth. It's not the size of her thighs she worries about, but the pride she thrives to keep that drive. That cinnamon twist. That cinnamon twist. That cinnamon twist. Ladies, can you feel me? That cinnamon twist. That cinnamon twist. That cinnamon twist. Ladies, can you hear me?
Hey, it is your girl Tasha, known to the world as the Tasha Carpenter, but everybody calls me your girl Tasha because when you hang with me, what? It is like you are hanging with your girl. And today in the studio, hanging with me, guys, we are talking about some things that affect the community. And before I get started and let these wonderful people introduce themselves, I want to say I got some messages from y'all, some of y'all people out there. This is not about bashing the police. This is about a conversation that has to take place no matter what. The bottom line is that in any profession, including law enforcement, there are bad apples, and that's what we're here to discuss today, about how we can hold those bad apples accountable. We appreciate all of the police that take your oath seriously and do what you're supposed to be doing, but this is not for you. So I'm going to start with my far left over here. Introduce yourselves, share what organizations you are from, and why you're here today.
Hi, my name is Jay Jimenez. I'm from the ACLU of Maryland. That stands for American Civil Liberties Union of Maryland. And I'm the legal program associate. And the reason I'm here is because part of my role at my job is I review all of our phone intakes. And these are people who've had their civil rights violated, and they contact us to try to get some sort of help. And so I just... the majority of the cases that I go through is police misconduct. And obviously we don't have the resources to litigate everything or to take on everything, but we still do our best to try to help in other ways. And it's just so difficult to hold police accountable for numerous reasons. There's the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights. That's a huge barrier. The FOP is a huge barrier. And it's just numerous cases where police are able to almost act with no accountability. And I just want to talk about how we could, make things more transparent, hold them more accountable, and even hold prosecutors accountable as well.
Okay, my viewers, some of them, Terrence, thank you guys sharing the fight. Terrence, I was about to play the Jeopardy music on him, right? Yes, okay. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Hi, my name is Kiana, and I'm with Life After Release. And my main reasons for being here today is for transparency and accountability. That's the only way that we can have any type of true reform. So I'm here for those two particular reasons.
Thank you.
I am Kima Hutchison. I am co-chair of Life After Release Participatory Defense, and that's in Prince George's County. But most importantly, I'm Kevin Sneed's mother. My son was brutally beaten by PG County Police, and like Ms. Tasha said, I'm not here to down all police, just the ones who need to be talked about and made light of their actions.
Hi everyone, I'm Trey Murphy. I am a field organizer with the American Civil Liberties Union of Maryland. And one of the major reasons why I'm here is to both lend expertise in conversations around policing in America, and a need for greater accountability, greater transparency, but just in general, a system that works, particularly for communities of color, and also because as a human being, one of, I think, the great moral challenges that we face today is the fact that we allow tragedies to go unresolved, unaccountable, not transparent, such as the tragedy that is the Kevin Sneed case, and many other cases similar to it that we both hear about and also don't hear about.
Well, guys, I think y'all should know that there is some emotion inside the studio right now, especially when Kima decided that she wanted to point out that she is, most importantly, the mother of Kevin Sneed. So there was like a rush of emotion that went through the studio right now. So this is a very, like we said, some people want to call it a taboo topic. It needs to be a table discussion topic. And that's what it is. You know, we're about platforms. So again, share and invite, share and invite. Some people do not understand what is meant by police accountability. So, what are we looking at? What are we talking about when we use that term, police accountability, guys?
Um, it's just holding police responsible for their actions. You know, law enforcement officials are supposed to be, I guess, defending the law, and they shouldn't be above the law just because they wear a badge. There are a lot of crimes that law enforcement officers have committed that had they not had a badge, they would be in jail. But they get a lot of protections from the law. Again, the FOP is definitely protecting them. So is the law enforcement LEOBR.
So a lot of times we think about when it comes to police brutality type of cases, but what other things do you see that police are being allowed to, some police officers are being allowed to cross the line without being held accountable? What other type of things are we looking at?
It's
Anyone
numerous.
can speak.
Numerous things. You look at overtime. There's a lot of time theft that goes on, and cities are paying thousands and thousands of dollars for that. Was there anything else?
We get live for that at Verizon. Zero tolerance. Go ahead.
In addition to that, what I like to point out to people is the areas in which are being policed. You have certain areas that are over policed where other areas are not as policed. And most people would say, oh, that's because those are higher crime rate areas. That's not necessarily true. It's because sometimes if you're not paying attention, those type of areas are predatory because they know that's where black and brown people, especially our young black men, are located. And that's where they go and, to scout or police or over police those particular areas. And so that's one area of police accountability. If you're spending X amount of time in particular areas, you should be spending that amount of time in other areas as well.
Okay. I have an issue with officers being in the neighborhoods with people that they have no empathy for. Mm-hmm. Because you would not do that to someone of your own race. Let's be real. Some of these people are getting rides to Burger Kings before they go to jail. The Caucasian people, let's say that. Let's put it out there. The boy who did the waffle shop, let me calm down, shooting, he was able to make it to a jail unscathed. Why, for a tail light, does my son come home after fighting to get him out of jail, broken and bruising? He is not the same person he used to be 2 years ago. I think it's unfair. Don't keep putting people in our neighborhoods that have no empathy for us.
Yeah, and I guess for me it's also this, blue wall of silence thing that you hear talked about a lot, right? So even beyond the obvious things, such as we want everybody to be abiding by essentially the same standard, right? We want them to be abiding by the same laws and policies that we ourselves have to abide by as citizens. We want officers to be abiding by that, but even beyond that, we also want officers who witness tragedies and atrocities and wrongdoings on the part of their colleagues to also speak up, because that expectation is expected of us as citizens. The first thing that you hear when a crime is committed in our communities is we need information from the community, right? We need folks who saw something, who essentially saw the incident and what happened to step up, right? But yet we don't demand that of public officials or public servants, such as the police department, right? So that's one avenue of things that officers unquestionably get away with all the time. I think the other avenue of things is the fact that a lot of these incidents, overwhelmingly the majority of these incidents, happen in black and brown communities, right? And inside these same communities, there is more resources devoted to essentially controlling the population than it is to increasing the quality of life of the population, right? And so oftentimes what you have is officers whose mandates is to go into our communities, is to over police them, is to teach them law and order and discipline or whatever term that wants to be thrown out there. But it's not to figure out the root causes as to why our communities are the way that they are, right? It's not radically talk about what it looks like to redistribute resources to ensure that the reasons why black and brown young people steal or sell drugs are radically addressed, right? And so all of these things are the combination of things that I like to call this system that essentially tries to put us in this pattern that unfortunately many of our police departments, if not the entire policing system in America, upholds drastically. That has to be redefined and reshaped.
All right, there you have it. We have a comment coming from, and look, everyone on the panel has started a watch party on their personal page. I can't necessarily see your comments. For whatever reason, Trey's live on his laptop is not showing me it. But if you come over to WBGR Entertainment, the Facebook page, and hit like, come over there, I'll see your comments. We have a Julia Callahan Adelman who says that we know one DC cop who uses his resources and his position to spy on his exes. It's not right. He bullies them. It's not physical, but it's definitely mental. So that's what we want to talk about, guys, as some of the things that go on in the communities with it. All right, so there's some kind of hurdles because I got a little bit of an idea of what type of questions that Jay wanted to talk about with it, but you wanted to pouring out some of the hurdles that's involved in making sure that you hold the police accountable. So what type of hurdles are you finding that you run into?
Well, first, the internal affairs complaint process. Let's say if a police officer does any kind of misconduct, maybe they speak to you disrespectfully or they assault you, and you want to submit a complaint. Once you submit that complaint, first of all the records are sealed when it comes to that encounter, so you're no longer able to request those records. That's how we always urge people. Request all your records before you submit an internal affairs complaint. Also, once the internal affairs complaint investigation comes to a conclusion, the police don't even have to tell you the outcome of that investigation, whether they found that officer culpable or if they faced any kind of discipline. So, it just makes no sense that...
So it's different than when it comes to you or I. We could go to Merlin Case Search or whatever
Exactly.
type of website there
Business is on
is
there.
for another place, and you get all the information up there about people, no matter what it is. But in the case of our people who are supposed to be protecting us, is disparaging treatment when it comes to that.
Exactly. And one case I'll point out is Anton Black. Rest in peace to Anton Black. He was a young black man who was killed by... after a struggle was the police officers. I can't remember what part of Maryland. I think it was near the Eastern Shore. But the officer who killed him had actually been suspended. I think in Delaware. He kicked a man who was handcuffed in the jaw and broke his jaw. And that kind of information isn't made available when officers do that kind of stuff. And that's what we should know about. We should know that these men who are supposed to be protecting us, who are carrying weapons, we should know about their disciplinary past and any type of behavioral issues that they may have.
Yeah, and I'll just add on to saying that there's also a couple more barriers, right? I think Maryland law enforcement, similar to other jurisdictions in our country, experience way more protections than the average citizen, right? And it's because many of our states have these things called Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights, right? And most of them go even further, such as Maryland's. I think that there is either somewhere between a 9 or 15-day waiting period between the time that a complaint is filed against an officer or the time that there's charges to the time that they can actually be mandated to be questioned, right? By investigators,
a lot of time
right?
to get your story together, depending on who you are.
Exactly, right? And so what that creates is these public trials before there's even trials inside the courts or investigations inside the court, right? So by the time you can imagine that, and we saw it play out even with some of the national cases such as Mike Brown or Freddie Gray, right? There was all of these debates in the public sphere around who these individual was as opposed to what actually happened to the individual, right? So there's these public trials that take place in a public sphere, and what it creates is it creates this narrative that says that it was justified for wrongdoing to take place in our communities and against our brothers and sisters, right? And so that's one of the things that have to change, right? That's one of the barriers, the structural barriers that we see, is that if you or I committed a crime today or tomorrow and there was motive, there was means, and there was opportunity, we would be sitting in a police precinct within an hour.
And for
Right.
hours.
And for hours.
As long as we
right.
possibly can. And they're also allowed to lie to you. So we do a Know Your Rights training for the youth in here in Prince George's County. And we teach the kids as young as, how old is
6.
As young as 6.
And they get it.
And they get it, to let them know, do not talk to the police, because a child as young as 6, they could be held in question until they ask for an attorney. They can ask for their mother, they can ask for their father, but it doesn't matter. They have to know how to ask for an attorney. So, and they're also allowed to lie to you during the process. It is perfectly okay for a police officer, in the interest of justice, to lie to you in order to obtain information or to further their case in the interest of justice. So I just wanted to put that out there, that it's already a stage set, that it's okay for them to lie to us and to lie to the community.
So I'm sorry, with that program, how do people get their children involved in that program? And in that program, is there a balance? Because if you're arrested and picked up by the police, then don't talk to the police, know your rights. But I'm sure that, to make sure, because some people think, again, this is about attacking the police, do you also educate the children or the youth that participate in that again, it's not everybody that's bad?
That's really not my place in that platform, to educate them on that particular, educate them on that the police are not bad. I mean, so long are the days for officer.
Some of them are not.
Yeah, but
Okay.
in that particular platform, that is not what we are particularly talking about. If you are stopped or if you are questioned in any capacity by a police officer, you are
Like
to
when
let
you're
them know.
arrested or something like that.
Even not even to be arrested, because if you are in school, you're going through a suspension process, or you have a school resource officer that comes up to you and start asking you questions. We have to protect our youth. So often we have them out there and so vulnerable, and that's the reason why a lot of them end up in the courtroom, and they have told the police all these things that they have turned completely against them once they get in the courtroom, and there's no turning back, because now they have given up all their rights, and they have a very long interview that the police pop up and say, hey, this is what you said to me. So it's a very thin line between it's okay to talk to the cops and be quiet until you get an attorney or you get somebody there.
Talk to them with proper representation. The same type of thing we say in the workplace. Get you a union rep. Go ahead.
Just to add to her what she said, just think about the world we live in, where we have to tell our 6-year-olds that you have to ask for a lawyer. You see what I'm saying?
That's serious.
Who makes laws like this? Who protects the cops so bad that they can go out and lie to a 6-year-old? You know what I mean? Get a 6-year-old to tell their whole story without having a parent there. It should be already, when you pick up anybody under 18, they have no right. They don't have knowledge like we do. So why wouldn't you then want to protect them? It should be about justice for all. It should be about protecting our children. I understand that it's so much corruption, and I have to wake up to it. I love being asleep from it. Please believe me. I love being asleep thinking the police was the best thing ever. I remember in D.C. we had the SOS band. They were cops. We love Officer Friendly.
The DARE program.
Our school almost daily.
Now we got armed
Now
officers
Those
with
days
guns.
are gone.
They're gone.
Those days are gone.
And I guess the only other thing that I'll add too is that, there's a difference when we talk about the root causes of the fact that the trust has been broken, right, with our communities, right? And, that many people have many different ideologies and philosophy about how we get back to that trust. Some say that we need to tear policing apart and rebuild something anew in its place because so much trust has been eroded. Others say that we need to get back to community policing, right? However you look at it, I think the overwhelming majority of people agree that because there isn't a lack of trust, there has to be accountability and transparency, and we have to be hammering those points. And the final thing that I'll say too is just was just slightly tied towards police officers and public officials, but more tied towards prosecutors, right? And so a great deal of our prosecutors, our district attorneys, our attorney generals, our state's attorneys are refusing to prosecute their colleagues, right? And that is a major, major issue that we're facing. So even when you get to the point of saying that we know these public officials are wrong, we know these police officers are wrong, then you have to jump through an additional hurdle after knowing to convince the district attorneys, who oftentimes don't want to set a precedence for prosecuting police officers, to essentially make the case to them why they should be seeking indictments of the police officers.
And I'm going to come back to you because that was one of the questions where we're going to go, but I'm going to take some of the comments. Guys, you could drop the comments in the chat. You can also call in on 301-429-9247. Going back a couple of comments here, we have Nene Tay saying the system was...
Hey, Nene.
The system... Oh, Nene. I'm sorry, baby girl. Nene. The system was not built for black people and will continue to enslave black and brown people because the prison industry is a business. Latasha Renee Ward says police misconduct should not be hidden. She also stated that when police conduct is criminal, we should not hide it. They should not be laid off or fired in one part of our states and then get hired as a police officer in another state. Nene also says when a good cop turned their head, when a good cop turned their head, when a bad cop violates someone's civil rights and falsely accuses or arrests persons, a silent cop becomes a bad cop. You better go ahead, girl. You better go ahead. I like that. That's right. And then she also said the police are not anyone's friend. They are paid and assigned to protect property over people.
Yep.
Not all police officers operate in that manner there. Not all police officers operate in that manner. And y'all see they are flashing a little thing. The views that are being said on the show is not a part of WBGR or whatever. But these are people who are dealing with stuff front row and center. So they have a right to voice their opinion. So when other people get a right to voice their opinion, they have to have that right. So if you are a police officer and you feeling something wrong, you can come on Your Girl Tasha too. Come on and hang in the studio.
Call in.
Me, okay?
I would love to talk to you.
Just call in too. 301-429-9257. Michelle Ford says, I used to be a police dispatcher for the police department many years ago. There were a lot of good officers that had a good relationship with the community, but there were many that used their badges to power trip. So there you have it there. Okay. So going back to the prosecutors are somehow supposed to be the gatekeepers of the situation. Some people talk about the fact that they think that one way that you stop worrying about prosecutors who don't want to prosecute their friends or their colleagues or something is to do what they say in states that have independent prosecutors. What do y'all know about that phrase? Someone tell me about it. Do you believe or advocate for independent prosecutors?
I'm not really familiar with independent prosecutors. Are you?
I'm actually not that familiar either.
But I know we don't have it here in Prince George's County. We have a prosecutor that is elected by and works for the state of Maryland. So I don't know about the independent process, but I know anything that's independent from the state is obviously probably going to be a better process because when you have a state elected official that is now prosecuting cases, now that creates an automatic friendship or an automatic partnership, or that's their coworker, that's their colleague. So now that creates a place where, okay, I did this wrong, can you cover this up for me, or can you do this for me? It creates that type of environment, because if you take away the fact that that person works for the state, then now I work for myself or I work for another organization, and you can't hold those same things over me that you could if I worked for the state, just like how you work for the state.
Exactly. So I would think that somehow in the line is something like that to be for independent prosecutors or whatever. That somebody sent that to me in an email as a questionnaire. The prosecutors are supposed to be about verifying that the police are acting with integrity. How do they really gauge that? What type of tools do you know of that they have to really make sure that all police officers are truly acting with integrity?
I mean, I think the overwhelming issue is that they don't have any tools, right? So you look at a lot of where these incidents happen, they're in places that are undervalued and under-resourced, right? So at bare basics, even when looking in, let's take Baltimore City for an example, because we all know that it's under consent decree, right? Even that bare basic to get them to the level of constitutional policing, which should be the floor standard, right? We should demand more than just constitutional policing and a higher integrity from our public officials in public service. But even in the bare minimum, there isn't adequate technology to be able to track police officers, right? To be able to track over time. And I would assume that in places like Prince George's County, in many cases, that it is the same, right? And so when you even talk about how do we get to that stage of even figuring out what it looks like to gauge the integrity, I think that we have to have a real frank conversation around, one, what community-based oversight systems are in place, right, that are working hand in hand with this independent prosecutor, right? To the budget, right, because like a lot of places that I know that have independent prosecutors have such small budgets that they're not going to be able to keep up with the workload, right? You're talking about interviewing colleagues, you're talking about interviewing community members, you're talking about digging through the officer's past to figure out what is his track record and make an informed decision. So you're talking about resources, right? And then I think finally, you're also talking about some level of trust, right? And in many regards, the trust has to come from the community. There has to be some system in place where that independent prosecutor isn't just working with themselves, but they're also working with a body that is responsive to the community.
And I'm just going to say this. It takes all of those things, Trey, that you said. But what it takes is it takes a bold, progressive stand to be able to combat what it is that we're going through as a community. It takes for like the prosecutors in Philadelphia with Krasner and Kim Fox, the one in St. Louis that stopped taking about 28 officers, put them on a list and will not accept or prosecute any more cases that come for them because they're known to have records and they're known to cause corruption and be terrorists in our community. It takes those bold stances. And quite frankly, it doesn't take that many tools for a prosecutor to stand up and say, I am not going to accept any cases from a corrupt cop. I am not going to any longer do this, or I'm not, and come out and make these public stances. That is working with the community, yes. But after you work with the community, then you as the top cop, as the top law enforcement officer, you now bear the responsibility, especially when we have a climate such as Prince George's County and Baltimore, where these cops are coming into our neighborhoods and terrorizing our community, killing our young boys. I have two sons. 19 and 15 years old. So I don't need you to go around looking for some resources. What I need you to do is I need you to stand up and be bold. I need you to say, I'm not accepting any more complaints or prosecuting another case, because what the cops are doing is this. They're coming into our community, they're beating up our children, they're killing our children, and then they're turning around and charging them with murder. They're turning around and charging them with assault and disorderly conduct and putting them in front of a jury of peers that don't look like them. That's what they're doing.
So kind of how I got in touch with Jay with you saying that made trigger that I was watching NBC4 News, and it was your story, your son Kevin, and you were coming out the courthouse, and they were talking about the fact that Kevin had been, the caption, because I wrote it down, the caption said something about that he had been accused of trying to kill a cop, but it turned out that he was, the video
brutally
or something,
assaulted.
he was assaulted, and he accelerated his car with a cop in his window to try to get away from him. But what caught my attention is that now there was a recommendation to reduce this down to a misdemeanor if there was a piece of paper signed to say we will not sue the police department. So what caught me was that Jay said, oh, that happens all the time. And I'm really like, okay, either a person did it or they didn't do it. And if you're going to reduce it, it kind of pissed me off because it made me think about Verizon when I'm in there with my union members and stuff. If you know sometimes some management are not good, they do stuff and you want to reduce it, or you send somebody, you took away their livelihood, and then you're not willing to give them back their money, but you'll put them back on payroll and leave this paperwork in their file. And this is even more serious in real life for you. So do you want to, are you able to, I know it's an open case, but can you speak a little bit more to what actually happened with Kevin?
I'm going to say as much as I think I can say, and you stop me, Trey, if I go too far. My son was stopped because of a broken tail light, is what was told to us. In doing so, the officer says that my son mashed on the gas, drug him 60 feet, causing him to jump into my son's car. But what is being neglected, what is not being said, is that my son, 20 years old, was not only beat, drug out the car, brought to the ground, dreads pulled out his head, kicked in his temple, his shin, his head, about his face, his chest, wrists so disfigured because he was also beaten handcuffs. Wrists so disfigured that he stayed in pain for 6 days inside of a Prince George's, 5 days inside of a Prince George's County jail on a no bond status for a broken tail light. Something that my son could have got a work order and went about his way. The problem was my son was blacker than a paper bag. And he stood about 6'1", and he weighed about 220. Right. It was not his fault he was that big. It was his country father who is the reason my son is that big. He is not a threat. He could have defended himself that day and hurt a number of cops out there. He took it. Why? Because he is not a thug. He is not a menace to society. He is a young black boy who was just trying to learn how to navigate this world. That's it. How to navigate this world being black. That's the only thing that Kevin did wrong that day. And the reason it was said that he can take a plea.
Call along.
Okay. The reason it was said he could take a plea to disorderly conduct is because what the state's attorney office said they saw when they saw the video, that he committed disorderly conduct. Then why are these charges still lingering 2 years later?
With a condition of if you don't sue. Hang with your girl Tasha. Who's calling and where are you calling from?
It's Joseph Tolbert. I'm calling from D.C.
Hi, Joseph.
Hey, how you doing, Tasha, and everyone on the panel? Hey, look, I was just sitting here thinking, man, I get sick and tired of seeing these racist police patrolling our neighborhoods. When are we going to police our own neighborhoods and raise our own children up to protect and serve our own communities?
I agree.
Yeah, I think that that there is great talk right now around alternatives to right, to the traditional policing style structure, right? And so one thing is that I have a philosophy that the people who are most directly affected by issues should be the ones on the forefront of it, right? Absolutely. They should be the ones front and center, right? And so when we talk about policing and we talk about public safety, right, which is supposed to be the mandate of policing in America, we also have to talk about the root issues that exist within these communities and use it in a both and scenario. And we also have to talk about, if not policing, then what? Right? So if not traditional policing, then what? And I think that there's a bunch of great conversations around participatory defense, great people, both unquestionably as a result of things like the movement for Black Lives and Black Lives Matter, and organizations who have taken a mantle around policing to try to figure out what sustainable alternatives look like. I think that they have some great things to talk about, but I think that it's not a part of public debate right now nationally, right? And so the question for me always is, how do we get to that place? Because I want to get to a place where sustainable alternatives exist and we're taking taking our leadership from the people that are most directly impacted, such as Kima, right? Somebody who has had to live with this for 2 years now, right? And trying to figure out what is the most sustainable alternative, if not policing. But also in the short term, how do we make policing better, right? Because we know that things don't change overnight, right? And so what are the things that we can put in place right now that can make life a little bit more comfortable?
So before you go there about making life a little bit more comfortable, I got an email question that said, in high-profile cases involving alleged police brutality, you often think about prosecuting the police involved, or technology like body cameras or tasers is the answer, or training or other reforms. Some classify, this person actually said, they classify those as piecemeal approaches that will never, ever resolve the issue.
Never.
Yep.
So they are interested in knowing, what is your opinion when you hear they had typed that BS in the email, but they put it in the words. When you hear that BS, what is your opinion on those, what they view as piecemeal approaches?
I definitely agree that those will never result in better policing. Eric Garner was killed on camera, and those officers that killed him aren't even getting punished. So I totally agree with that statement. What has to change is just the culture, and I know that's probably sounds a little bit cliche, but the culture needs to change. This culture that police officers could go into communities that they're not even from, where they don't even know the people, and just terrorize and act like they can control the entire groups of people. We right now in Maryland, there's like a good number of police officers who aren't even from Maryland. They're from Pennsylvania, and that's strange to me. This should be strange to everybody else. Police officers need to be invested in the communities that they're policing. They need to be a part of that community.
Well, based on Joseph's comment that he made here, which would imply, are we part of the problem when it comes to that? Because what he stated is we need to stop teaching our children not to be police and teach them that they should be the police. So are we somehow contributing to that problem because we encourage our children not to grow up and look at being a police officer in their community as a career?
I definitely agree to that, and I just want to thank Kima for actually coming out, because a lot of our black and brown people are afraid. Some of them are on probation, some of them are on parole. I know particularly from being the participatory defense community leader here, is some people are afraid to go into the courtroom to support their loved one out of fear of retaliation. If they're retaliating against their own kind in the same blues as them, then our people are afraid. So what I would suggest in order to address his comment is that, yes, we do have to be a part of the community, and we do have to start putting our children in these positions. Why is it that the average prosecutor is a cis white male age 40 years old? Why is that our reality? Because we have not trained our own kind to be a part. We do train them to be, to take a back seat, or not to step up, and or out of fear of retaliation and being afraid. They don't want a bullet in their back. They don't want to be pulled over and not go home. The one thing that Kevin said during his interview with NAACP was, all I wanted to do was go home. I was afraid that this was going to be my last day. That's all he wanted. So we have to teach them not to be afraid, and teach them to actually not only be a part of the community, but actually take these positions, like he said, so that we can be back to our own kind.
Did you want to say something before I go?
No, go ahead.
Well, let me say what Nene's saying on your behalf. Demand that Aisha Brave Boy drop all charges for Kevin Sneed.
Thank you, Nene. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that that's one step in the right direction. Is that prosecutors who knows that there's something funny with the case going on
And still continue to prosecute it.
Need to be in a position to boldly be able to take these actions, such as dropping all of the charges, and still feel like they have the support of the community and other officers behind them, right? What I'll say before I get to before I jump back to Joseph's point, what oftentimes happens is that, frankly, many district attorneys get afraid because they have to work with the police departments every day. They don't really want to, for lack of better terms, piss them off too much, right? And so what oftentimes happens is that they try to censor any type of misconduct that comes on a part of their colleagues, right? Which we know aren't right. And so we have to be in better positions to, just as Jay said, demand that the culture is changed, right? And just as Kiana said, demand that we also put our own people inside of these positions. But I will also say, to Joseph's point, that I am also not interested in putting people in positions for the sake of putting people in positions. I would much rather make sure that we, yes, have our people in those positions, but that they're working with us to radically change the structure and the culture that exists there. Because oftentimes what happens is that we put people in these positions, they get burnt out, they get tired, or they become a part of the problem, right? And we don't want that to happen. And so, yes, to Joseph, we need to make sure that we are encouraging our children, our grandchildren, our nieces, nephews, aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, to be inside of these positions to actually become police officers, but we should be putting expectations on them that they hold themselves and we hold them to higher ethical and moral standards, right? And to make sure that the change that we see, that we are demanding, begins with them. So I'll stop there.
It always baffled me how our state's attorney, our DA, and our attorney general, is that how do they sleep at night? And most of them are PG County residents that go into that position. I'm trying to figure out, how do they sleep at night? And if you have a black young relative in your family, how do you sleep at night knowing what they do? You can't get over that PG County is full of corruption. You can't get over it. DOJ is investigating them. That don't happen unless something needs to be investigated. We have to wake up. And for the people that live in PG County, I feel so bad for you guys. I do. I mean, I bailed out. I went to D.C. because I can't deal with PG County anymore. I can't deal with it. It's just like a bath of corruption, and everybody's trying to protect each other, not understanding there's going to come a day where the people that you protect, you're going to fall with. You're going to fall with. And I'm the type of person, I'm not falling with nobody. I am on my own when it comes to right is right and wrong is wrong. And if you take a job where you're supposed to be the keeper of justice, the gatekeepers of justice, and you let stuff like this continue to go on, it's causing your citizen pain. All I'm asking is for the officers who are doing a bunch of misconduct and who are a part of this racism inside the department that's going against their own officers. Those officers we need to be rid of them. Your community is begging for your help, elected officials, begging for your help.
So Joseph said that the way that the way they're able to sleep at night is because they are there for a check, and we don't hold them accountable. And when it boils down, it's really just our fault because we don't hold them accountable. So going with that, I'm gonna let you go with your comment, because then I got a question about how do people hold them accountable. But
I'll just be really quickly with my comment. I was just going to say, we see the effects of not changing this broken system by Kima's testimony today, right? The fact that PG County has lost an invaluable resource because she feels like she can't have a life there, right? Like, that's the economy of PG County is now affected because her tax dollars isn't directly going into that county. The social well-being of the community is now affected because she has essentially moved, and now somebody else has to move back into the community and rebuild trust with the neighbors and within the community. All of it, when we have entire people moving out of our communities and our systems, everybody is affected, right? And so we oftentimes have to keep that in mind, especially as we talk about policing, right? Because a lot of people unfortunately move, and you lose an economic base, you lose resources. Those are people who probably have small businesses inside the community. You lose that, or they're contributing to small businesses. So all of these things are things that oftentimes I wrestle with, because I'm like, people need to do what's best for them to make sure that their mental health and their health in general is intact. And also, we need to address the causes as to why people feel like they need to leave the community, and policing is one big cause of it.
Or why they don't trust the system works. They just don't trust in the police.
So going back to that, with it comes to all type of elected officials, how do the elected government officials play a part in this puzzle?
So that's a big one. Do you want to start off, Kira?
We elect them to office. We hire them. We fire them. And to speak to Nini's point, there is already a demand on the table for Miss Aisha Braveboy to drop this case. Whether or not she responds to this demand for this case to be dropped is yet to be seen. However, there is a demand, and we have to start doing that. We have to demand that, stop pimping out our vote. And actually go to these. I can't stress it enough. And it was once upon a time where we had our own community watches and we knew what was going on inside of our own communities. Stop going in your house, locking your doors, and just watching reality TV. You got enough reality going on here in Prince George's County. So go to a public meeting if you think I'm lying. There's a lot of stuff going on. Go to your next Democratic meeting or go to one of these public meetings and you'll see that there's enough reality going on here in our communities, and you need to be connected in some way. How are you connected? What source are you connected to? Because you need to know and be able to know what these elected officials are out here doing so you can hold them accountable. Stop just waiting for them to come into church during election season and pimp out your vote and tell you, how, they're going to work for you and never actually do anything. Start following their votes. Pay attention to them in Annapolis. Pay attention to them at county council meetings. Pay attention to exactly what they're doing. Know what bills they're passing and not passing. Shout out to Delegate Barron, who has an awesome bill out this legislative session, where he's actually asking for us to get more accountability on these same officers that we're talking about, whose records are sealed and who's not getting back reporting. That's an awesome bill, and I really congratulate Delegate Barron for bringing that out. But you need to know who these legislative elected officials are and follow their voting record.
Anybody else want to chime in on that?
I mean, I can't stress enough what Kiana just said. You gotta see what they're voting for.
Nene says you better speak the truth, girl. Go ahead.
The John Hopkins policing bill is a perfect example. Everybody should be looking at who voted for that and who voted against that, because that'll tell you everything you need to know about that elected official. And yeah, you just need to be aware about where they stand. Ask them, what are you doing to dismantle this system of white supremacy and police brutality, and let them know that you're going to hold them accountable.
And
Joseph Tobin says the police department is infiltrated with the KKK. Pranitha Taylor said, whatever happened to Officer Friendly that I was taught about in grade school? Pranitha, you must have came on late, girl. We
talked about Officer Friendly.
You're going to have to hit the replay and catch that, okay? And Joseph also said, or let them tell you to vote for me because I'm a black woman like Aisha Braveboy. He was not an advocate for Aisha Braveboy at all. He was an advocate. He was an advocate for Donna. Lord have mercy. Jonathan Newton says elected officials either maintain or change the system of oppression.
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of great things have been said. One thing that I want to mention that's so crucial in our day and age right now is to find a political home, right? Like, I can't stress that enough. These conversations are happening. They've been happening. They was happening centuries ago with our ancestors, and they're still happening to this day, right? And a lot of how you find out this information is by having some level of political analysis, just as Jay and Kiana mentioned, that it's important to know your elected officials, but not just know their voting record. It's also important to know where they stand at as far as their values, right? As far as their integrity, their morale, right? And to know that they aren't switching up for a vote. Right, like I can't stress that enough. And that for me, that comes through a political home, right? And so I believe in the work that the ACLU is doing, the American Civil Liberties Union, from which I work there, of course, naturally. That we have to have a constitutional mandate, right? And then I also have other organizations that I go to who deal with specific things. Life After Release, they deal specifically with incarcerated folks, right? There are people who deal specifically with environment or economics or housing, right? But it all depends on who you are and what type of person you are and what you're interested in. But having a political home is so crucial and important to me, because you get to find out this information. I don't like having sitting here and being the one to educate people for the first time around some of these things, right? I always like to make sure that there's small, intimate conversations that are taking place, because oftentimes that's how we get to actual change and transformation.
And how about actually doing, because I talked about a lot during the election, because I had a lot of people that came on. Aisha Brave Boy as a candidate was one of the people that came on my show. But I had to talk about it. There was so many people. We have a lot of these political Facebook groups with these Facebook bullies that are supposed to be the gods to tell you all the information about who to vote for and who not to vote for. Learn to do your own research. You got to learn to do your own research. I can't listen to what you're saying. I got to verify what you're telling me, Trey. You might be a good brother and everything, but I can't take this. And then how about some of the people that don't even get out there and go out there and vote at all? That's a big problem. But when you're voting and you're voting only based on what your homeboy said or what your homegirl said or what your boo said or what your side chick said, that's not going to work. So back to Julia Callahan Alderman said, met those elected officials during the election. Most were voted in by their sorors or their frat brothers. I was not happy to see that. They played nastily. Girl, don't be giving me no word like that. Nastily. And they played dirty. I was a witness to a lot of that dirt. Joseph Tober says, I'm just speaking the truth. We need people who are qualified. She's never handled a criminal trial. Our weight is just goes to the level of consciousness of the PG resident. Prince George's.
Gorgeous Prince George.
Prince George's,
So
not
say.
PG. It ain't Moco. Anywho.
I get y'all good about that too.
Just look at all the facts. Jonathan Newton, guys, y'all know y'all can call in here on 301-429.
Yeah, call in. I want to hear your voice.
Andre Johnson, I know it's lit and you're not supposed to be on Facebook. We missing you this week, sweetheart. Thank you for popping and say I can't be on here. I'm on Facebook. For lit. Jonathan Newton said the best way to get police accountability is to unelect every leader who does not support the police accountability. Joseph Tolbert says, how many criminal trials has she tried? I'll wait. Nope. Don't be saying no PG.
Joseph.
We're not talking about no PG County, boy. Say that number again. The number is 301-429-9243. Now, we have talked, 9247, baby. I'm going to put it in the chat, 9247. We've talked a lot about police brutality. We talked about the theft of overtime and stuff, but what about when it comes to mass incarceration?
Yes.
Oh wow! Yeah, that's what Life After Release. Actually, that's what we do. We are a part of an organization, or a part of a movement rather, called the Mass Liberation Project. And what it is that we basically, at the base of it all, we're holding the district attorney accountable, and we're in a co-governor type of relationship with that person, that elected official, to make sure that they're doing the things that they said, meeting with them, because again, the community's too busy. Mass incarceration looks like a person who is not African American going to court for the same charge that a person who is black or brown going to court, and that person getting 6 months for their time, and the person who is black or brown getting 8.5 years for that same crime, having the same judge and being in the same county. That's what mass incarceration looks like. It looks like locking up all of our people and continue to having these laws on the book that are going to affect just the black and brown people.
All right, now we're going to come back to that. Hold on. Hanging with your girl Tasha. Who's calling and where are you calling from?
Jonathan, I'm calling from Largo.
Hi, Jonathan.
Hey, what's going on? I'm so happy to see you all on there. You all are doing the work that gets police accountability. That's what you're doing right now, informing the community not only about the conditions and the circumstances, but about the actors and the actions that they take that cause police accountability to not be gotten is so important. Most people think that everything is okay until it impacts their own family member or somebody that they closely know. Okay. And so I just wanted to just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, informing the public, growing your audience, and informing them about the laws as they exist right now, to be able to then approach your legislators to change the law. The law is what creates the conditions that officers are able to operate underneath. And so right now the law in the state of Maryland with the Police Officers Bill of Rights is one of the most protective laws in the nation for police officers. And so when police officers know that they can get away with the type of stuff that they do, they're going to try the things that they have been doing in Prince George's County.
Thank you so much, Jonathan.
Yes,
Joseph
thank
says,
you.
"Hey, bruh." And he said, Kiana, good job staying their ass.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Joseph.
Okay. Joseph says I should bring Jonathan on my show.
Yes,
okay,
yes,
Jonathan.
yes, you should.
Hit me up on Facebook. Send me your friend request. We'll see what's going on with you on the show too. You just got to vote that you should be on Hanging with Your Girl Tasha. Thank you for calling in.
I'm going to bring Kiana and Kima with me, though, because they have the better intel in terms of the county, the local county. And that's one thing I do want to stress, is that police accountability is a local, statewide issue. Most people, and when you talk to them back in 2014, 2015, 2016, they were talking about national law, federal law. There's not much the federal government can do. We have to attack this from the local standpoint and from the state standpoint.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm hearing you got your attorney. You have a great story. So we'll be talking, Jonathan.
Yes.
Very well. Thanks,
Thank
bye.
you.
Take care.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Jonathan.
Okay, so with all this, because people talk about mass incarceration and whether or not you could turn back the hands of that, the history of that, is a way to really turn it around. All that is definitely going to impact the communities and when it comes to their trust level. Now, for that police officer that does take their oath seriously, that believes that it doesn't make a difference, it's not about whether or not if I'm my race and who I should protect, because if I'm a black police officer, look out for the black people, white police officer, look out for the white people. None of that stuff. The person who strictly is about protecting the people, what can those police officers do to regain trust in our communities for them? Because it makes their job harder. Okay? They're trying to do their job, and the bad apples in anything you do, the bad apples always make it harder for the people who are doing what's right. But what do we say? How do we help those police officers who really want to do what's right for them?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a couple things. So one is definitely those people need to be in community, right? They need to be in community, not just with their fellow officers, but with the broader community that they're charged with serving, right? And that they need to be making it known that they are out here actually trying to shift and shape the culture. Or reshift and reshape the culture. And then I think even beyond that, they have to be more vocal, right? A lot of the officers who are quote unquote the ones who aren't doing wrong are also the ones who are the most silent when these atrocities happen,
Like
right?
the comment that she made earlier.
Exactly, and so we have to.
In our world, that would be called conspiracy or, obstruction of justice. But in
Exactly.
their world, it's just they
It's
want to
just
get
silence.
sympathy, and that we can't.
And that's
Can't win.
and that's what I say about there has to be this floor standard that is the constitutional policing, right?
Yeah.
But for those people, we have to demand more. We have
Yeah.
to demand a higher ethical standard. And just really quickly, I also wanted to jump back to the mass incarceration thing because I think that this all ties in. That there's a great documentary that is out with BET and Action. I think it's Action St. Louis who did the documentary, and it's called Closing the Workhouse. So you should, I encourage, I'm not going to go too much into it because I know we're running out of time. But I
Jonathan
encourage
said, short answer, treat us like you treat white people. I'm sorry, I couldn't stop that. Call me sir.
That's true.
Call
That's
me
true.
sir. Call our women ma'am. Give our children the benefit of the doubt like they do white kids. That's what the officers can do. And this, no. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Jonathan.
All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're completely fine. That is actually pretty funny. And it's spot on because it brings me to my next point when we talk about the standard, right? One of the homies named Charlene Crothers is one of the founding members of Black Youth Project 100, which is a part of the movement for Black Lives. And she has a book out called Unapologetic right now. And so I've referenced that to say two things that they taught us, the movement for Black within the Movement for Black Lives Network. One is that we have to be unapologetic in our stance, right? So for those officers who are on the fence, who are quote unquote not doing anything wrong, they have to be unapologetic in their stance around holding themselves to a higher moral standard, right? And saying that regardless of what my colleagues think about me, I'm going to call this out because I know in my soul this is wrong and this is a moral issue, right? So that's one thing that she taught us and blessed us. And Black Youth Project really blessed us with. The second thing is that she uses Frederick Douglass' quote around power concedes nothing without a demand, right? And she reframes it as power concedes nothing without a organized demand, right? And so when we talk about how do we get to this new and this different and this better world, that this utopian that we envision, we also have to talk about it in terms of mass incarceration. We gotta close the workhouse. That's an organized demand, right? A demand says that mass incarceration is a problem, right, and that our elected officials need to do something about it. An organized demand says we need to close the workhouse because we know that this is one big business, and that is one of the great moral challenges of our society right now. Is the fact that we can allow people to get rich off of the suffering of our communities, but not even beyond that, off of the fact that these are people who have committed crimes against our communities, and yet they are essentially resold back into slavery, right? And so we have to be careful about those things, and we have to always keep in mind that as we envision this bigger, this bolder, this better world, that we have to be unapologetic in those stances, which is a part of the reason why and this is not tied to the ACLU, me as an individual, I'm very much a prison abolitionist, for the sake of the fact of understanding how much of a big business prisons are, right? Do I believe that there are some people that need to be locked up? Yes, I will tell you firsthand. R. Kelly should have went to jail, and he needs to be in jail, right? That doesn't change my stance on banning
That's a whole nother
prison.
topic.
A whole nother story, right?
Now, guys, it actually is 6:30. Okay.
It could go on and on.
But it can go on and on. And I think that we've talked a lot about the issues. But what I do like, too, is for us to have the ability to kind of like talk about the solutions that go on with it, too. And then if you guys have any kind of, is there any kind of activities, rallies, or anything that's coming up that you want the community to know about? Because actually, it's always a reason why we do some things around here. I had a guest next week who was supposed to be coming on the show that's not able to come on the show. She's been rescheduled. So I don't know. I have to get people saying good show if people are willing to, if you want to come back and continue the discussion next week in part 2.
Yes.
But if you have something that's going on right now between now and next week, a rally or something that's going on, to share that information real quick.
So tomorrow we have Lobby Day. If you want to know how to get involved, we have Lobby Day. If you would like to leave, our bus is leaving at 8 o'clock in the morning. We are taking a whole group of people down to the most anticipated Lobby Day, where we're partnering with JOTF, Out for Justice, and Life After Release's first time participating in a Lobby Day, where we will pick you up and take you. So if you want to come to that, I can put that information on your page. You can call me at 240-845-4007. Every second and fourth Monday of the month, I have a mass liberation meeting at 4710 Auth Place on the second floor, and that's in Camp Springs, Maryland. And the last way that I will encourage you all to get involved is we have a petition out that is going around that we are demanding that Aisha Braveboy, our current state's attorney, drop these charges against Kevin Sneed. And I would like to put that challenge out to everyone that is just trying to, want to turn a blind eye to take and sign this, or actually call her office and say that you are in support of having these cases against Kevin dropped. And that's what I have to say.
Okay, we're going to have Kiana put all that information in the chat too there. And I'm gonna have to do real quick, because I want to put a mention out here about next week. The way that they're able to come back, guys. Next week was supposed to be Tiffany Boyd Wesley. She's the first African American woman battalion chief in Northern Virginia that fights fire. She was she went to school with me. She's been planning to be on here, but WJLA made her a star, and now she got to push your girl Tasha to the side. I just want to say that for you, Tiffany. But she'll be on here later on. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying I'm going to do something that I never normally do, which is say, follow me on social media. My Twitter handle is at the Trey Murphy. That's Trey Tre, by the way. So at the Trey Murphy on Twitter, and then you can find me at Trey Murphy on Facebook. Again, Tre Trey. So yeah.
Well, you can follow me on Facebook. I'm honestly not on Facebook that much, but like Jay Jimenez, you can find me. And yeah, just hold your elected officials accountable. Keep an eye on what they're voting on. Demand more from the police. Keep them to a higher level of standard than most people, because they're defending the law at the end of the day.
We'll be back. You want to say one more? Go ahead.
Yes, for all the people who are going through the justice system and need help, we're at 9201 Basil Court, and that's the NAACP office. That's where we hold our meetings every Saturday from 1 to 3.
Yes.
We can help you. What we do helps.
Okay. So we will see you guys back next week. And all y'all that's tuning in, your girl Tasha, if this is your first time, you need to be here every Monday at 5:30. You never know what's going on in our studio. So catch us here next week. Those who can come back will be back next week. And actually the following week, my guest is State's Attorney Aisha Brave Boy. So there you have it. See you next Monday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Jonathan, if somebody can't make the panel here, you're welcome to come back and join us next week, okay? Talk to you guys later.
Bye. Thanks for having us.
Lady who walks around without being shady, who knows her values, who's gone through trials.